I never believed the saying that one lives on the memory of a child who passed away. Even after 24 years, I found that he simply wouldn't be buried in my heart. Everyone, how should parents who have lost a child go on living? After burying my 8-year-old child in my heart, I lived only because I couldn't bring myself to die. Those were times when eating felt like a sin, and laughing felt like a sin. But now, 24 years later, I know. That child was not buried. He is still alive and breathing in my footsteps, on my eldest son's shoulders, and in my grandson's laughter. The story I am sharing today is not about overcoming grief. It is the story of our family, who, despite the sorrow, still managed to live out our memories. Before I begin, please subscribe, like, and turn on notifications. This is a channel that delivers the hidden stories of ordinary people every day. Today, too, my eyes open at 5:30 in the morning. It is a time my body remembers before the alarm even rings. The first thing I do after throwing off the covers is stand in front of the sink. In that brief moment, as I wash my face with cold water and face the mirror, I meet a strange woman every morning. Deep wrinkles around my eyes, a smudge around my cheeks, and scattered gray hairs on my temples. I wonder if I've become like this at 62, but I quickly let it go. I've just lived this long. These are all my badges of honor. I comfort myself as I wipe my face with a towel. Still, every now and then, just once in a while, I think about it. My face at 28. Back then, I held back. When my husband first saw me, he said I looked like a flower when I smiled. My cheeks were flushed with color, and my eyes were clear enough to make that remark feel worthwhile. At that time, I was a full-time housewife. A life of packing my husband's lunch in the morning, chasing after the children during the day, and finishing the day by boiling a warm soup in the evening. That was all there was, and I thought that was enough. I thought the world would flow that simply. Now it is different. I am now an insurance planner. 20 years of experience. I started this to survive, then I endured to get used to it, and now this work has become my everything. Every time I see my name, Jungmo Ron, written on a business card, I get a strange feeling. Sometimes I wonder if this name suits me, and other times I wonder what would have become of me without this business card. I don't have the luxury of preparing breakfast. I make a cup of instant coffee and drink it while packing my briefcase. Inside the bag are things I need to keep: client consultation materials, insurance brochures, a well-worn notebook, and a small mirror. I use that mirror to compose my expression before meeting a client. I can't look exhausted. I can't look weary. In this job, facial expressions are a skill in themselves. Once I finish packing my bag, I pick up my phone and write a text message. I haven't missed a single morning. The recipient is my son. My son is a firefighter. Stay safe today. It takes exactly 5 seconds to write those 6 words. But does my son know how much I want to say within those 6 letters? Be careful, my son. Have you eaten? If you're tired, take a break. Please, don't get hurt, son. There was too much to put in there, so I just shortened it to 6 letters. Stay safe today. It is true that I am proud that my son is a firefighter. I have boasted to my neighbors and relatives. My son is a firefighter. I can even feel the strength in my voice when I say those words. But honestly, there is one emotion that clings tightly to that pride and refuses to let go. It is fear. When I am watching TV and a siren sounds, my body freezes involuntarily. If I hear the sound of a fire truck passing outside the window, I stop what I am doing and strain my ears. It is truly difficult to describe that feeling of my heart sinking. Is today my son Minjin's shift? Is it in that direction? Nothing bad will happen. As those thoughts spiral, I quietly take out my phone. And I hold back the urge to call my son. I know that calling while I'm working might be a distraction. So I just stare at my phone's wallpaper. The one I have set as my background. A photo of my son, his wife, and my grandchildren. My son's face, smiling broadly in his firefighter uniform. Whenever I see that face, two faces overlap in my mind. Minju, now at 35, and Minjin, at 11. 11-year-old Minjin was a very quiet child. He seemed spirited and lively, yet his eyes always looked as if he were deep in thought somewhere. One day, he said to me, "Mom, I'm going to become a firefighter and save everyone. Then, sad things won't happen again." At that moment, hearing those words, I couldn't laugh or cry. It was a feeling where one side of my heart was breaking, while the other felt strangely warm. It was only much later that I realized what those complex emotions were. Minjin said those words after losing his younger brother. It is still not easy for me to mention the name of my youngest, Hanjun. 24 episodes have passed, yet whenever I try to utter his name, it feels like it gets stuck somewhere in my throat. When I open the front door with my bag, my husband is already there. He stands there, holding the car keys. Since retiring, he has taken on two roles. One is housework, and the other is working as an anti-static technician. Where do we have to go first? I ask the same question every morning. I give the same answer every morning as well. I have to meet a client in the Gangdong area first. He is busy and only has time in the morning. Then, my husband starts the car without a word. Sometimes, we find it amusing ourselves to see the two of us getting into the car before the sun has even fully risen. When did we become like this? I ask, and my husband chuckles. The morning sunlight begins to spread outside the car window. Another day begins. The day of Jiang Mo Ran, a 62-year-old insurance planner. I know this day is not easy. But I also know that I must live. I know that there are now plenty of reasons to live. So today too, I pick up my bag and head out the door. The day I received the call that my son had passed the firefighter exam, I was speechless for a while. "Mom, did I get in?" At that short remark, tears welled up first. Even I couldn't tell if they were tears of joy, relief, or something else entirely. I just cried. Holding the receiver, my son seemed bewildered for quite a while. "Mom, why are you crying? Aren't you happy?" Of course I am. But at the same time, I couldn't help feeling a deep sorrow sink in my chest. Someone whose job involves jumping into dangerous places. Someone who has to run into a burning, collapsing building in the very direction everyone else is fleeing. That is what my son is going to become. The first year was truly difficult. Whenever Minjin started his training, I couldn't sleep. When I woke up at dawn, I would automatically turn on the news. Are there any major fires? Any accident reports? Only after confirming that nothing bad had happened would I close my eyes again. Even then, I still couldn't fall asleep. There is one thing I am particularly sensitive to: the sound of sirens. Whether I am walking down the street, sitting in a cafe, or consulting with a client, if I hear the sound of a fire truck siren, I stop whatever I am doing without realizing it. My body reacts first. My heart beats faster, my ears follow the sound, and calculations begin automatically in my head. For 20 years, I have been working to calculate other people's misfortunes in numbers, death benefits, disability ratings, and compensation limits. But strangely enough, when it comes to my son, not a single number comes to mind. I simply cannot bring myself to calculate it. I thought for a moment. Is Minjin working today? What time did he leave for work? Where could he be right now? Once, a fire truck passed by outside the window during a client consultation. The siren blared loudly, and I involuntarily stopped speaking and looked out the window. The client must have noticed my strange behavior as they asked, "Are you okay, planner?" I replied, "Ah, yes. I'm sorry. My son is a firefighter, and I just heard the siren." After remaining silent for a while, they said, "Wow, so your son is a firefighter. You're an amazing person." That single remark made me puff up with pride. Minjin doesn't talk much about himself. He rarely brings up stories about the hardships of the job site or the heart-stopping moments. I know he does that because he doesn't want me to worry. But once in a while, when he's had a drink or two, he opens up to his father. I heard a story from my husband. He said that one day, our son stopped by after work, but he was quieter than usual and looked gloomy. My husband silently poured him a glass of soju, and Minjin accepted and drank it. After a while, he finally spoke up. "Dad, I couldn't save an old woman today." My husband didn't say a word, he just listened. He said Minjin simply said, "The fire spread too fast." He kept thinking, if only I had gone in just a little sooner, it would have been fine. When I heard that story from my husband, I couldn't say a word for a long time. How much pain must Minjin have been in at that scene? I felt like I could picture the back of my son as he walked home from work, carrying that weight all alone. That night, I cried in secret. I stood under the covers, away from my husband. Seeing Minjin struggling reminded me of the day Hyunjin left us 24 years ago. When his autumn arrived, I didn't know it would be the last autumn our family would spend together. That autumn, when our second son, Hyunjun, ran around playing, he was an 8-year-old who kicked fallen leaves with his feet, spread his arms wide when the wind blew, and gazed with wide eyes as if everything in the world were fascinating. That day was an ordinary day. It was just a typical autumn afternoon, with nothing special about it. I was preparing dinner at home, and Hyunjun was playing with his neighborhood friends at the home-cooked play area. Minjin had just returned from school, tossed his bag down, and was eating a snack, while my husband hadn't come home from work yet. Just then, the doorbell rang. When I went out, it was the mother of Hyunjun's friend. Her face was pale. Her hands were trembling. She looked at me, unable to find the words to speak, but I knew from that single look in her eyes that something had happened. Hyunjun doesn't remember much of what happened after that. I don't even know if he ran out with his shoes on or barefoot. I heard the sound of people murmuring from the direction of the playground, and someone shouting that his mom was here. The paramedic kept saying something, but not a single word registered in my ears. People stepped aside to the sides. Through the gap, I saw it. That red jacket Hyunjun had worn when he went out. Hyunjun had said, "Mom, I'm going to play with my friends." It was bright. I told him, "It's cold outside, don't catch a cold, wear a jacket." I remember only one thing clearly, the sight of our Hyunjun laughing angrily and answering, "Okay." The rest of my memory is fragmented. Our Hyunjun, whose face I cherish so much, had his eyes closed. I called his name as if he were peacefully sleeping. Hyunjun. I don't know how many times I called. I called until my voice was hoarse, but the child did not open his eyes. At the hospital, the doctor said something. But those words did not register in my ears. My husband was holding my hand, and even though I felt his hand, I felt as if I couldn't feel anything at all. It felt as if the world had stopped. The clock was ticking, yet it felt as though time wasn't flowing. Those who haven't experienced it wouldn't understand what that is like. After the funeral, I went into my room and closed the door. I did so for several days. I didn't eat, I didn't wash, and I didn't speak. My husband called out from the door. "Honey, eat something." I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say, or what words might come out. At that moment, there was only one thought in my head, that I was at fault. If only I had looked after him a little more, if only I had been a little more careful, if only I had gone out with him at that moment. Self-reproach washed over me like waves. A sinner who lost a child. Those words wouldn't leave my mind. I stopped eating meat. It wasn't that I didn't want to eat it, rather I felt that I shouldn't. It felt like a sin to eat, sleep, and live in a world without Hyunjun. About a week passed like that when someone knocked on the door. It wasn't my husband. It was the sound of a small hand knocking. "Mom?" It was Minjin. I opened the door. 11-year-old Minjin was there. His eyes were swollen. He must have cried for days, after all, having lost a younger sibling himself. But looking up at me with those eyes, he said, "Mom, you have to eat." At those words, tears welled up again. It felt so apologetic and heartbreaking to see an 11-year-old child telling his mother to eat. Minjin came into the room and sat next to me. After sitting in silence for a while, he began to pat my back. He patted my back gently with his small hands, as if an adult were comforting a child. Then he said, "Mom, you know what? Yes. I'm going to be a firefighter." It was a completely unexpected remark. So without thinking, I asked, "Why suddenly?" Minjin thought for a moment and said, "I'll become a firefighter and save everyone. Then, sad things won't happen again." Hearing those words, I couldn't say a word. That was the conclusion an 11-year-old reached after losing his sibling and watching his mother crumble. To become someone who saves lives. At that moment, it felt like something was stirring inside my heart. It's hard to pinpoint exactly what it was, but it felt like something that had been frozen solid was melting a little. I hugged Minjin tightly. "Yes, my son, it would be so cool if you became a firefighter. A wonderful firefighter who saves people." I cried my eyes out like a little child, apologizing for not being able to pay enough attention to Minjin. Those were the first words I spoke in that long darkness. I felt that as his mother, I couldn't just stay like this. From that day on, Minjin changed. He became a child who knew nothing but studying. He didn't chatter or go out to play. Instead, he sat in the library reading books and solving problems. Even when his friends called him to play, he would stay behind, saying, "I have something to do." His homeroom teacher called me. "Mother, Minjin has suddenly been studying so hard. It hasn't been long since his younger sibling was born, so I'm a little worried." "Mother, I don't know how to explain it." I just said this. "I will keep a close eye on him, teacher." There are people who ask my husband how he managed to endure that time. I heard later that my husband cried in the car on his way to work every morning. At home, he never once broke down in front of me. He must have thought that since I was falling apart, he needed to hold his own. When he came home from work, he would sit silently beside me, prepare a meal, place it in front of the room, take care of Minjin, and never once got angry at me while doing all the housework. One night, my husband spoke softly. "Honey, you have to live, even if it's just on top of our Minjin. He's watching." Those words lifted me up. The words that Minjin was watching. That he was watching me break down. The next day, I opened the door and stepped out. I washed my face and ate a little rice. My husband didn't say a word and simply scooped some more soup into my bowl. That was all? But that was enough. His autumn, after Hyunjun left, still hasn't ended within me. When next autumn comes, the sound of falling leaves keeps reminding me of that afternoon. Still, now I can face that memory. I have become able to sit right there without avoiding or turning away, nodding my head and saying yes. That's how it was back then. It finally hit me. Only now can I put Hyunjun's photo out in the living room. That short 8-year-old year when Hyunjun passed away. The 24 years I have lived without him. In numbers, I can compare which is longer, but in my heart, I cannot. That short 8 years is etched bigger and deeper than the rest of my life. My husband is a strong person. At least he was always like that in front of me. Even after losing Hyunjun, and during the long time I was holed up in my room, my husband never once broke down in front of me. He silently endured the cycle of taking care of Minjun, managing the house, going to work, and coming home. I didn't know how he could do that back then. I found out later. It is a story my husband quietly shared long after Hyunjun was gone. I cried in the car every morning back then. He said that tears would just flow automatically whenever he got in the car alone on his way to work and grabbed the steering wheel. He told me that he cried his heart out until they arrived at the company parking lot, covered his eyes with his palms while parking, and then opened the car door to get out. "Why didn't you cry in front of me?" I asked. My husband looked out the window for a moment and then said, "What if I collapse with you when you are already broken?" At that one sentence, I was speechless. I had always thought of him as a stoic man from Gyeongsang province, but the fact that he was holding the steering wheel alone and sobbing uncontrollably struck me deeply. My husband is a man of few words by nature. He doesn't show his emotions easily, rarely gives compliments, and is clumsy at expressing himself. For a while after we got married, I felt a bit hurt by that. I heard that other husbands buy flowers, celebrate birthdays, and are good at saying affectionate things, but my husband was nothing like that. But after losing Hyunjun, I realized something. It is simply that his way of expressing himself is different from others. Setting a meal and placing it in front of my room instead of speaking. Sitting silently beside me instead of speaking. Gently holding my hand instead of speaking. That was his way of expressing love. My husband retired 2 years ago. He worked for 38 years at a mid-sized construction company. He started as a site manager, rose through the ranks to become a team leader and department head, and climbed right up to the brink of becoming an executive. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that company was his entire life. So you can imagine how empty he must have felt after retiring. However, as soon as he retired, he decided on his own duties. First, housework. Second, my chauffeur. "You're tired." "You should rest now," I said. He grinned and replied, "This isn't all. My last job is protecting our house and you. It was a bit awkward at first. Suddenly, he was wearing an apron and sitting in the kitchen. The stew was a bit salty, he missed the corners while cleaning, and he washed the laundry all together without separating colors, so at first, I would sometimes redo it from behind. But at some point, I decided to just let him do it. It wasn't about whether he did it well or not. The fact that he was trying was something to be grateful for. Every morning, my husband wakes up first. While I wash my face and pack my bag, my husband makes coffee and holds the car keys. Who's first? It's the same question every day. At first, it didn't feel natural. When he said he would be my chauffeur, I was honestly half doubting it. I wondered if he would even last a month. But even now, 2 years later, my husband waits every morning with the car keys. Whether it rains, is hot, or is cold, he has never missed a ride. Sometimes, if I come out late, he does grumble. Come out a bit faster. But even that grumbling has become endearing now. We talk a lot while driving. At home, we don't have many opportunities to talk because we're both busy with our own tasks, but in the car, it's just the two of us. We talk about trivial things, who we're meeting today, what the weather is like, what we're having for lunch, but I really enjoy that time. One day, while waiting at a traffic light, my husband suddenly said, "Honey, I was really sorry about that time." Taken aback, I asked, "What?" "You had such a hard time all alone after Hyunjun's accident. I should have taken better care of you." I looked out the window for a moment. The traffic light turned green. "What are you talking about?" "I held on because of you. But I'm sorry too. Back then, I was so caught up in my own sadness that I couldn't pay enough attention to you and Minjin." My husband silently placed his hand on mine. Then he started the car. That was all? That was the first and last time my husband and I talked about that. We didn't need many words. That was enough. In the evenings, my husband massages my feet. Since I walk all day, my feet get very stiff. When I sit on the sofa and hold out my feet, he massages them without a word. His hands are quite rough. They are coarse and thick, having worked on construction sites. But strangely, when those rough hands massage my feet, I feel like I'm going to cry. It has been 36 years this year since I started living with this person. We shared the loss of Hyunjun together, the moment Minjun became a firefighter together, and the birth of our grandchild together. Both the joys and the sorrows have all been shared with this person. Sometimes, I catch a glimpse of my husband's profile as he drives. His hair has turned gray, the wrinkles on his forehead have deepened, and they seem smaller than before. There are times when I am struck by the realization that we are growing old together. I am not sad, rather I feel strangely reassured. I have a feeling that as long as he is by my side, I will be okay. He lives in the blunt Gyeongsang province. Actions over words, presence over expression, a warm hand over a bouquet of flowers. He is the one who has been by my side for 36 years, like that. Protecting our home and protecting you is my last job. Those words left a deeper impression on my heart than any declaration of love. I didn't start working as an insurance agent because someone recommended it, nor because I desperately wanted to. I simply felt like I would die if I stayed at home. Sitting quietly in a house without Hyunjun, in a space filled with traces of him, I felt as if the walls were tightening around me. Hyunjun's favorite toys were still there, the scratches he left on the wallpaper were still there, and his rice bowl was still there. Yet the space where only Hyunjun was missing was incredibly hard for me to bear. When my husband went to work and Minjin went to school, I was left alone in the house. That sense of isolation was unbearable. Without sound, my thoughts would multiply, and when I thought too much, I would keep returning to that day. Then, getting through the day became incredibly difficult. There were days when I sat on the sofa, from morning till evening, unable to move a single step. Then, when my husband came home from work, he would ask, "Did you eat today?" But more often than not, I would just shake my head. Then one day, an older woman from the neighborhood came to visit. We had known each other for a long time. She was someone who would occasionally drop by out of concern for me after what happened with Hyunjun. She said she had just come to see me that day, and while we were having a cup of tea, she cautiously brought up the subject. "What do you mean? I work in insurance right now. Have you ever thought about giving it a try?" I initially refused because I thought it would be better for you right now to get out of the house rather than just staying home. I told her, "What kind of insurance agent am I? I have no confidence in meeting people, and I'm not good at talking." But as she stood up, she left me with just one remark. What did she say? "It's not important whether you're good or bad right now. You just have to get out to survive." Those words lingered in my mind for days. You just have to get out to survive. She was right. I knew myself that if I stayed at home like this, I felt like I would truly disappear. So I called her. "Sister, I'm going to give it a try." I still remember the day I first went to work. My hands were trembling as I took the bus to the office. I was scared of standing in front of strangers. The prospect of learning something new felt daunting, and I wondered if I could really do it. When I opened the office door and stepped inside, everyone stared at me in unison. Those gazes were so overwhelming that I lowered my head and sat in a corner seat. I couldn't say a word all day. It was difficult for a while, even after the training began. I had to memorize the product details, understand the terms and conditions, and practice explaining them to customers, but my mind just wouldn't work. I couldn't concentrate. Even while listening to the training, my mind kept wandering. I forgot what I had memorized quickly, and when asked to practice a consultation, I would freeze up and just sit there, unable to say a single word. The people who started with me were making it all right, but I felt like I was falling behind all alone, so I even cried on the bus on my way home. I remember the day I met my first customer. It wasn't someone I knew. It was someone introduced by a senior insurance agent, and we agreed to meet at a cafe. I was so nervous on the way that I just stood in front of the cafe for about 5 minutes. I had to go in, but my feet wouldn't move. I took 3 deep breaths and went inside. That person waved at me first. I sat down and took out the materials I had prepared, but my hands were trembling so much that the paper made a scratching sound. Perhaps noticing, they asked with a smile, "Are you very nervous?" I answered honestly, "Yes, because it's my first time." Then they said, "Just relax." That single remark eased my tension a little. As I did, I thought to myself, people save people. The contract didn't close that day. He said he would think about it a bit more, and I told him it was okay and got up. Strangely, though, I didn't feel bad. Even though I didn't close the deal, the very fact that someone sat across from me and we talked was a big deal to me. When I got home, I told my husband, "I had a client today." My husband stopped scooping rice, looked up, and asked, "How was it?" I replied, "I didn't close the deal, but it was still okay." My husband nodded silently and added more side dishes to my bowl. Things started to change, little by little. Meeting people became less frightening, my speech opened up a bit, and my product explanations became increasingly natural. Most of all, what changed was that I now had a reason to go out in the morning. Having a place to go, people to meet, and work to do gave me immense strength at that time. From a certain day on, this job began to feel different to me. During a consultation, a client said, "Honestly, I'm not sure if I even need insurance." To that, I replied like this: "It is only natural that you feel that way. You don't see insurance when nothing is happening. But once something does happen, you realize how fortunate it is that you were prepared in advance." As I spoke, I thought to myself, if I could have prepared something before Hyunjun left that day, of course it wasn't something that insurance could have prevented. But that feeling seemed to connect to this work. The work of preventing someone's misfortune beforehand. No, to be precise, the work of holding them up so they don't collapse when misfortune strikes. It began to feel like I was protecting the world a little bit on Hyunjun's behalf. 20 years have passed. It has been years of running around until my feet sweated. I faced many rejections, had many hard days, and there were moments when I wanted to quit. Still, I kept going. Because as long as I was doing this work, I felt like I wasn't just a sad mother, but someone who was needed by others. At some point, the name Jungmo Ran on my business card stopped feeling unfamiliar. I know now that this name is me, and this work is me. My son and his wife come over on weekends. It's not always the case, but they always come whenever my son and his wife gather. When I hear my daughter-in-law, Jisoo, open the front door and come in saying, "Mother, I'm home," I stop what I'm doing in the kitchen and wipe my hands. I really like that. It's like the house suddenly becomes harmonious, wouldn't you say? My grandson's name is Junseo. He is 5 years old. As soon as the front door opens, he runs in shouting, "Grandma!" The sound of his little feet stomping on the door, and the sight of him running with his arms outstretched make me smile every time I see it. When I held him, he felt so light and warm. One day, while we were having lunch, Junseo was being picky about his food. He pushed away the spinach with his spoon, pouting, saying he wouldn't eat it. "I don't like this. It looks like grass." I said, "Minjin, you shouldn't be picky. You have to eat a balanced diet," but Junseo frowned even more. That expression, that look in his eyes, that mouth shape, I put down my spoon. It was Hyunjun. I saw Hyunjun in Junseo's face. The Hyunjun who used to be picky about food, the Hyunjun who stubbornly refused to eat what he disliked, the Hyunjun who was somehow cute even while frowning. That child was reflected intact in Junseo's face. A prickly sensation shot through my heart and tears threatened to well up. I quickly turned my head away. I took a sip of water. My daughter-in-law, Jisoo, noticed. This child is truly thoughtful. She is someone who knows without being told and senses things without being shown. After finishing our meal, we were doing the dishes together in the kitchen when Jisoo quietly stood beside me and said, "Mother, Junseo's eyes look exactly like Uncle's in the photo when he was little, don't they?" I paused for a moment while washing the dishes. "Right?" "Yes. It has been like that since the first time I saw him. I told Minjin Oppa about it, and he said so too." Jisoo has never met Hyunjun in person. She only knows him through photos and stories she heard from Minjin. Yet, even without her saying it, I can feel that she considers Hyunjun family. When setting the ancestral table for the holidays, Jisoo is the first to make sure Hyunjun has a place. "Mother, please let me know if there is anything Uncle Junseo liked. I will prepare it." When I first heard those words, I thought I was truly grateful to this child. I remember the day Jisoo first came to our house. When Minjin said he had someone he was dating and would bring them over, honestly, my heart was a bit heavy. I did. What kind of person is she? Is she someone who can be by Minjin's side? Is she someone who can understand the sadness in our home? Many thoughts crossed my mind. That day, as Jisoo took off her shoes at the front door, she bowed her head and greeted me. "Mother, it is nice to meet you for the first time." Her voice trembled. That trembling, however, felt like genuine sincerity. It wasn't a facade she was putting on to make a good impression. I could see that she was truly nervous. I knew it then. This is the one. Jisoo listens well to my stories. Sitting side by side while peeling fruit and chatting about trivial things has now become my joy on weekends. We talk about clients, the neighborhood, and exchange insignificant stories, and before we know it, the afternoon flies by. Then, if I suddenly fall silent or seem to be looking into the distance, Jisoo gently takes my hand. "Please be quiet." How warm that hand is. I think to myself, this must be what it feels like to have a daughter. I had 2 sons, but thanks to Jisoo, I feel like I have gained a daughter. I keep these thoughts to myself because I would be too shy to say them directly to her. After finishing his meal, Junseo runs around the living room. He goes back and forth, taking out blocks, then cars, climbing onto Grandpa's lap, then coming back to the toys. Watching him, it feels like time has stopped, yet at the same time it feels like it is flowing again. Lately, I often think that the time Hyunjun couldn't fully enjoy is flowing toward Junseo. It feels like Junseo is doing the things Hyunjun never got to do, and smiling in his place. Of course, Junseo is Junseo. He is not Hyunjun. He is a different person, and a child who will live a different life. But even knowing that, I can't help but feel my heart warm whenever I look at Junseo. When I hug Junseo, I say to myself, "Grandma will protect our Junseo." Those words don't come out of my mouth. I just said them in my heart as I hugged him tightly. In the evening, my son and his wife stand up. "Mom, we're leaving now." Junseo waves his hand. "Goodbye, Grandma." I remember Minjin whispering to me while hugging Junseo. "Mom, lately sometimes I can't really remember Hyunjun's face. That makes me so sad." I held my son's hand. "It's okay." Mom remembers. Minjin nodded and picked up Junseo. Hyunjun was in Junseo's face, and Hyunjun was in Minjin's heart as well. That child was still alive in the hearts of our entire family. I stand there waving until the front door hits the floor. Once the door is finished, the house becomes quiet again, but that silence doesn't feel as heavy as it used to. It is a silence that feels as if something warm still remains. My husband sits on the sofa and says, "Did you see Junseo being fussy about his food today? Right? He really takes after Hyunjun." I smiled without answering. My husband smiled too. That moment, when the two of us sit in the living room and laugh in silence, is truly precious to me. The day Minjin passed the firefighter exam and came home in his uniform for the first time, my husband didn't say a word. He just looked our son up and down once, silently took off his glasses, and wiped the corners of his eyes with his hand. Watching my husband wipe his eyes, I also thought to myself, I did. If Hyunjun had grown up healthy until now, he would have become a wonderful man like his older brother. The moment that thought crossed my mind, my heart felt heavy. Strangely, however, no tears came. It felt as if my sadness was being covered by pride. That was all? That day, after sending Hyunjun off, was likely the first and only time in my husband's life that he ever shed tears in front of his children. Minjin didn't say anything either. Watching his father wipe his eyes, he just stood there quietly, then said, "Dad, let's eat," and went to the table. In that brief moment, I, watching from the side, realized just how much a father and son can connect. There are relationships where you understand each other without words. These two are exactly like that. Since Minjin became a firefighter, the father and son have grown closer. Once a month, they make sure to go out for a glass of soju together. My daughter-in-law, Jisoo, says jokingly, "I think you get along better with your father than with me." When Minjin retorts, "Then," my husband chuckles. Watching that, I find myself smiling without even realizing it. One day, Minjin stopped by late at night after work. His expression was a bit somber. My husband silently took a bottle of soju out of the refrigerator. He poured 2 glasses, pushed one in front of Minjin, and held the other to wait. Minjin picked up his glass and drank it in one gulp. After that, he remained silent for a while before slowly opening his mouth. "Dad, I had a hard day today." My husband simply replied, "Yeah." Minjin continued, "There was someone there, but by the time we arrived, it was already too late. It was an elderly woman living alone, and we discovered her too late." My husband refilled his glass. Minjin took it and said, "There was nothing in that old lady's house, Dad." The rice cooker was empty, and the refrigerator was completely empty. As that image kept lingering in his mind, my husband paused for a moment and said, "Just knowing you remember her will keep her from feeling lonely." Minjin lowered his head. After sitting in silence for a while, my husband took a sip of his drink and spoke. "If you're having a hard time, say so. Enduring it isn't the answer. But that hardship is what is making you a better firefighter. You need to know that too." I overheard that conversation in the master bedroom. I didn't listen on purpose. I woke up and came out to get some water, but I stopped when I heard the sound. Unable to enter the living room, I leaned against the door crack to listen, and tears welled up. I realized that this is the kind of thing a father can say to his son. I can only tell my son, "Be careful, don't get hurt," but this man knows how to get into his son's heart and say exactly what he needs. After my husband retired, we started seeing Minjin more often. Things we couldn't take care of before because we were too busy. Now that we have time, we are able to take care of him. I memorize Minjin's work schedule, and if it's his day off, I contact him first. "Are you free today? Let's grab a meal." There are days when Minjin comes laughing and asks, "Dad, why do I have to contact you so often?" And days when he honestly says, "Dad, I want to rest." Then my husband just says, "Okay, rest," and steps back. Not forcing him to stay is how he treats his children. Something has changed for me as well since my husband retired. Before, I used to handle things alone. Now, this person listens to my burdens with me. On days when a client has had a hard time, or when I just feel drained for no reason, even without saying a word, he knows just by looking at my face. When I sit on the sofa, he sticks out his knees as if demanding my feet. He massages my feet with his rough hands and says, "You walked a lot today." That is all there is to it, but I wonder why it is so comforting. Protecting our home and protecting you is my last job. When I first heard those words, I just brushed them off. I thought he was saying it out of a sense of emptiness after retiring. But as time passed, I realized he truly treats it like his profession. Anticipating my worries and relieving them, and being there for Minjin as both a father and a friend, he is doing this more faithfully than he did during his long career. Sometimes Minjin says, "Dad, you look good these days. You look happier than when you were working." Do you know what my husband said in response? It's because back then, I lived for the company, and now I live for myself. I heard those words from Minjin before and thought about them for a long time. What it means to live for oneself. For this person, living for me, living means being by the side of family. Driving my wife home in the morning, having a glass of soju with my son, holding my grandchild, and coming back to sit quietly, there is nothing grand about it. But to him, that must be more meaningful than his work life. Minjin once said to me, "Mom, I want to live like Dad?" I smiled and asked, "What part of Dad?" Minjin thought for a moment and replied, "Being faithful to the people by your side. Being there always, even if you don't say much." It seems easy, but it's actually really hard. He is right. Being always there, not disappearing. I know how difficult that is. Ever since the day Hyunjun left, I realized that nothing in this world is eternal. That is why I know how precious the people who are by my side right now are. Today, my husband is sitting on the sofa watching the news. He is wearing glasses, holding the remote, and staring at the screen with no particular expression. It is an ordinary and quiet evening. But I like that sight. Being here safely today. For me, that is the greatest relief and the deepest. It is gratitude. You know how people often say that a child who leaves before their parents is buried in the heart? I lived hearing those words too. When someone said those words to me after I lost Hyunjun, I nodded. Yes, so that is what it means to bury him in the heart. I thought that it meant tying the child deep within my heart, covering it with earth, and living on. But as I lived on, I realized that wasn't the case. He cannot be buried. No matter how hard I tried to cover him up, no matter how hard I tried to forget him, that child continued to live and breathe inside my heart. When spring came, the azaleas Hyunjun loved bloomed. When summer came, I thought of the playground where he used to run and play. When autumn came, that red jacket lingered in my mind. And when winter came, the thought that the child who should have been in a warm place was beneath the cold ground weighed heavily on my heart. With every passing season, Hyunjun returned with me. So how could I possibly bury him? I know now. Burying a child in the heart does not mean forgetting them. It means living on while holding them close. Inside my heart, that child's creating a space, never letting it become empty, and living each day while feeling that warmth. I think that is the true meaning of burying a child in one's heart. Hyunjun is in every step I take. Living as an insurance agent, I knocked on countless doors, and Hyunjun was within those footsteps. The desire to prevent someone's misfortune. The desire to hold someone so they wouldn't collapse. I know now where that feeling came from. It is a heart given by Hyunjun. Hyunjun is also on Minjun's shoulders. My son's broad shoulders, which never looked back even as he jumped into the fire. I'll become a firefighter and save everyone. Then, sad things won't happen again. That vow Minjun made at age 11 still lives on those shoulders. It feels like every time Minjun saves someone, he is saving Hyunjun along with him. Hyunjun is also in my husband's rough hands. The hands that silently fill a soju glass for our son. The hands that wait every morning holding the car keys. This man has become stronger since losing Hyunjun. I think everything that has become warmer is all thanks to what Hyunjun left behind. And Hyunjun is in Junseo's bright smile. That look in his eyes that instantly turns into a smile, even after being picky about his food. The way he runs towards me with his arms outstretched. the way he opens his eyes wide, as if everything in the world is fascinating. The time Hyunjun couldn't fully enjoy before he left is blossoming in Junseo. Every time I see that, I think, Hyunjun is here too. He is living like this here too. One day, Minjun told me, "Mom, whenever I go out to the scene, I run thinking that every single person I save is our youngest." After hearing those words, I couldn't speak for a while. Those words hurt so much, yet I was so grateful and so proud. So this is what Hyunjun left behind for our family when he departed. He didn't just leave behind sadness. He left behind a heart that saves lives. Sadness doesn't disappear. To be honest, it still comes sometimes. Driving alone, watching the autumn leaves fall, for no reason, when that happens suddenly, without any reason, I just cry. I don't hold it back. I know now that those tears are a part of my life. If I try to force myself to erase the sadness, it only grows bigger. If I pretend not to see it and turn a blind eye, it calls out to me even louder. But if I just acknowledge it, saying, "Yes, I am still sad. Yes, I still miss him," and accept it, strangely enough, I can breathe. It feels like I am embracing the sadness, rather than letting it swallow me whole. That is what I learned after losing my young son. I think there are some among you listening to this who share my feelings. Those of you enduring another day thinking of the child you lost. Those of you who suddenly stop laughing even while smiling. Those of you who pretend to be fine but break down when you are alone. I have something I want to say to you. It is okay if it doesn't bury completely. It is okay if you keep thinking about it. It is not strange to be unable to forget that child. That is love. It is proof that that love, stronger than death and longer than time, is still alive. However, I want to ask for just one thing. Please do not let that sadness consume you. The child who loved you. Please love yourself just as I did. Please eat, bask in the sunlight, hold the hand of the person beside you, and live today. That is the greatest love we, who remain, can offer to those who have passed away. Today, I wake up in the morning and stand before the mirror. My wrinkles and gray hairs have increased, but they don't feel as unfamiliar as they used to. I now know that this face is me, and that every single wrinkle represents the time I have lived. The 8 times Hyunjun lived, and the 24 times I have lived without him. All that time is engraved on this face. Minjun is likely somewhere today, protecting someone. My grandson Junseo is probably at kindergarten right now, his eyes wide open, learning about the world. And Hyunjun is present within all of this. Children are not meant to be buried in the heart. They are meant to be lived on together in footsteps, on shoulders, on fingertips, and in laughter. So let us live today as well. I hope the story I shared today, with a sense of slowness and understanding, has resonated in a corner of your hearts. Wishing you complete peace in all your days, I sincerely thank you for taking the time to stay with me until the end.